6-8 inverses of functions. One of the ways that we can test to see an inverse of a function is something called a horizontal line test. So if we draw a horizontal line on the graph that is drawn for us, if it only intersects once, the inverse is a function. So if we look at example A, this only intersects once, so the inverse is a function. For B, we draw that horizontal line and it intersects 3 times, so the inverse is not a function. For C, we draw a horizontal line and it only intersects once anywhere you would draw it, so the inverse is a function. For writing rules of inverses, to find the inverse of a function, the only thing you have to do is switch your x and your y and re-solve for your new y. From there, you have to give your domain and range. With these, what I'm really focusing on is finding the inverse of the function. So if we look at example A, we have f of x is equal to 1/2 x plus 2 squared. So what we're going to do is change the f of x to be y is equal to 1/2 x plus 2 squared. And then we're going to switch our x and our y. So this is going to become x is equal to 1/2 y plus 2 squared. So in order to get what y is equal to, we would first have to take the square root of both sides. This is going to leave us with the square root of x is equal to 1/2 y plus 2, and now get your y by itself. Move the 2 over, subtract it from each side. We're going to have 1/2 y is equal to the square root of x minus 2, and then we multiply each side by 2 to get y is equal to 2 square root x minus 4. With this, we can actually rewrite it to be, there we go, g of x. So g of x is equal to 2 square root x minus 4. For B, we have f of x is equal to x cubed minus 2, so we're going to change the f of x to be y is equal to x cubed minus 2. Change your x and y, so x is equal to y cubed minus 2. Move the 2 over, add it to both sides. So we have y cubed is equal to x plus 2. Then we take the cube root of each side. So we get y, or g of x. Y is equal to the cube root of x plus 2, which is the same thing as g of x is equal to the cube root of x plus 2. For C, we have f of x is equal to 7 minus 8x over 3. So we're going to change the f of x to be y is equal to 7 minus 8x over 3. Switch your x and y, so x is equal to 7 minus 8y over 3, and now get y by itself. Multiply each side by 3. We're going to have 3x is equal to 7 minus 8y. We are moving the 7 over by subtracting it. So we have negative 8y is equal to 3x minus 7. And then we divide each side by negative 8. And we are left with y is equal to negative 3x plus 7 all over 8, which is the same thing as g of x is equal to negative 3x plus 7 all over 8. For D, we have f of x is equal to 5 times x plus 6 squared. So change your f of x to be y is equal to 5 times x plus 6 squared. Change your x and your y, so x is equal to 5 times y plus 6 squared. Move the 5 over, divide it from each side. So we have y plus 6 squared is equal to x over 5 we are going to take the square root of both sides. So we have y plus 6 is equal to the square root of x over the square root of 5. Now, you cannot have the square root of a number on the bottom of a fraction, so we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 5 to get y plus 6 is equal to the square root of 5x all over 5. We are going to subtract 6 from each side. Remember that 6 is the same thing as 6 over 1, so we'd multiply the top and the bottom here by 5. So this is going to give us y is equal to the square root of 5x minus 30 all over 5. We rewrite this with g of x and have g of x is equal to the square root of 5x minus 30 all over 5. The next part of our lesson deals with determining whether two functions are inverses of one another. When we do this, we are first going to do f of g of x and then do g of f of x. If we get the same answer, then the two are inverses. So, first do f of g of x, which is going to be 2 times 1/2 x minus 4 plus 4. Then do g of f of x, which is going to be 1/2 times 2x plus 4 minus 4. All right, so first do the f of g of x. F of g of x is equal to 2 times 1/2 is 1, just leave the x. 2 times -4 is -8 plus 4. So f of g of x is equal to x minus 4. For g of f of x, we have 1/2 times 2x, which is just x. And then 1/2 times 4 is 2. So we combine these like terms here. G of f of x is equal to x minus 2. Now, the x minus 4 and the x minus 2 should be the same thing, and they are not. So they are not inverses of each other. For b, we have f of x is 1/4 x squared and g of x, which is 2 square root x, where x is greater than or equal to 0. So first we're going to do f of g of x, which is going to be 1/4 times 2 square root x squared. Then we're going to do g of f of x, which is going to be 2 times the square root of 1/4 x squared. So f of g of x is equal to 1/4 times 2x cubed, or x, the square root of x squared. So this is going to be 1/4 times 4x. The 1/4 times 4 is just x, so f of g of x is equal to x. For g of f of x, we have 2 times the square root of 1/4 x squared. Well, the square root of 1/4 x squared is 1/2 x. So g of f of x is equal to 2 times 1/2 x. 2 times 1/2 x is just x. So g of f of x is equal to x. Because these two are equal to the same exact thing, they are inverses. So when we do f of g of x, g of f of x, if they equal the same thing, they're inverses. If they don't, they are not. So for c, we have f of x is equal to 2/3 x plus 6 and g of x, which is equal to 3 over 2x minus 9. So we're going to first do f of g of x. So 2 over 3 times 3 over 2x minus 9 plus 6. We are going to get f of g of x is equal to 2/3 times 3 over 2x is just x, And 2/3 times negative 9 is negative 6 plus 6. The negative 6 plus 6 is 0, so f of g of x is x. We are then going to do g of f of x. So this is going to be 3 over 2 times 2 over 3x plus 6 minus 9. So g of f of x is equal to 3 over 2 times 2/3 x is x. 3 over 2 times 6 is going to be 9, positive 9, minus 9. Combine your like terms. 9 minus 9 is 0. So g of f of x is equal to x. Because these two are equal to one another, we have inverses here. For f of x is equal to x squared plus 5, and g of x is equal to the square root of x, we are going to plug these in, get f of g of x. So we're going to have the square root of x minus 5 squared plus 5. So this is the square root of x minus 5 times the square root of x minus 5 plus 5. So f of g of x is equal to the square root of x times the square root of x is just x. Then this is going to be negative 5 square root x, negative 5 square root x, plus 25 plus 5. We combine our like terms. F of g of x is going to equal x minus 10 square root x plus 30. Now find g of f of x. So g of f of x is going to be the square root of x, which is x squared plus 5 minus 5. Well, with this one, we cannot simplify that any further. So are these two the same? No, they are not equal to one another. So these are not inverses of one another.